Greetings, everyone. Dale Parish, Convention of States, Indiana Live. Nice to have you with us tonight. Folks, we've got a special show for you tonight, a special report, special edition. I'm not sure what to call it. All I know is it's special, okay? And just let you know ahead of time here, we may be running a little bit longer than normal. We always try to keep our broadcasts right around 60 minutes, but we may be going a little bit over that tonight. So bear with us. I think you're going to find that it's worth it. But in the meantime, let me bring on hello, Mr. Ken Kashuba.
Hello, Mr. Dale. How are you?
Fine. Turn your volume up a little bit.
I can give you a little more boost if that's working for you.
There you go. There you go. You sound good.
All right.
Ken's a co-host, and of course, he, as usual, will be monitoring our viewer comments and questions. So if you're viewing either on Facebook or YouTube tonight, feel free to submit any comments or questions to us, and we'll do our best to entertain those. Ken, this is broadcast number 255. And you've been with us now for 118 of those. How about that, huh?
Yeah, pushing that big 125 coming up.
Yeah, we are. We are. That's right. Well, folks, like I said, we have a special program for you this evening. If you recall, I want to remind you of a young lady that has joined us a few programs ago, a few weeks ago. I introduced to you Wendy Olson. And let me show you, just remind you of who that is. It's Wendy Olson. And Wendy is going to now be heading up a new series that we have started, and it's called Pillars of Freedom with Wendy Olson. Now, Wendy is, amongst many other things, her profession is she is a legal nurse consultant. She's told me all the degrees that she has. I can't keep track of them. I know she's got a couple of master's degrees. Very, very educated young lady. But she is technically a legal nurse consultant. And she's become a J6, a January 6th advocate. She has really gotten herself involved in everything involved in the January 6th situation that's been going on in our country. And she is also a former district captain. So for Convention of States. So Wendy is a Convention of States volunteer. She's housed in Alabama. And she was a district captain, but she gave up that position to focus on the January 6th situation. So what Wendy is doing with the new series is, again, it's called Pillars of Freedom. And the first pillar, or the first January 6th individual that she's bringing to us is a young man by the name of Jeremy Brown. And we're going to be telling you a lot about Jeremy Brown this evening. And Ken is going to lead it off by providing you a recording of a document that Jeremy created, and it's called Don't Do Nothing. And this is a document, it's kind of a long document. We've edited a bit for time purposes. And I've asked Ken to do a narration. Is that the proper way to say it, Ken, or a reading?
Yeah, narration is a good way to put it. It's narrating Jeremy's actual letter.
And he wrote this about himself and about his situation, and I think it will give you a a good background. Whoa, what was that, Ken?
I didn't hear much on this end, Dale.
Good. I heard something here. It sounded almost like a fireworks that went off.
Well,
Anyway. So anyway, Ken, we're going to play his recorded narration of this document, Don't Do Nothing. And for your information, the document can be found on Jeremy's website, jeremybrown.defense.com. So once Ken completes, once we complete the recording of Ken's narration, then I'll come back on briefly, and then we'll go into the recorded phone interview that we have with Jeremy. And this is part one of our interview. And we're talking now. Mind you, we're talking to Jeremy straight from his prison cell. He is, well, we'll fill you in as we go along here. I'm getting ahead of myself here, I think, Ken. So okay, we will let's get into Ken's narration of Jeremy Brown's document, Don't Do Nothing. So here we go.
My name is Jeremy Brown. I am a 20-year retired U.S. Army Special Forces combat veteran. On January 5th and 6th, 2021, I was in our nation's capital as part of an all-volunteer protective detail tasked with providing security for organizers and speakers at a legally permitted political rally. On September 30th, 2021, I was arrested at home in Tampa, Florida, by approximately 30 to 40 heavily armed federal agents and local law enforcement. They came in full force to serve a misdemeanor arrest warrant for being in an unauthorized area. These were no ordinary agents. They were agents working as part of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, JTTF. Oddly, in the 9 months prior to that day, I had never been contacted or questioned by any investigators about this case. Stranger still, the arrest warrant and search warrant had only been granted 1 day prior. This, despite numerous members of my protective detail having been arrested many months prior. While this may sound unusual to you, I know exactly why it happened. 10 months earlier, on December 9th, 2020, the exact same JTTF agents that arrested me attempted to recruit me as a confidential informant. Their pitch was intended to gauge my willingness to infiltrate law-abiding citizens groups that had no criminal history and certainly were not designated terrorist groups. Having a healthy mistrust of federal law enforcement, I recorded the entire personal meet, as referred to by special forces on the battlefield. Of course, I declined to pursue any offer from the agents and went on my way. A few weeks later, while standing next to the presidential stage, awaiting President Trump's address, I was contacted by phone from the same JTTF agent. I explained where I was and what I was doing, so on January 6, 2021, they were well aware of my location and reason for being there. On January 7th, I texted that agent with a video of the murder of unarmed female Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt by Capitol Police Officer Lieutenant Michael Byrd and told him, "Here is a contact report for you." He acknowledged watching the video with a, "Wow, I still have the text, at least I did." That was the last direct communication I had with that particular agent or the JTTF, even though I made multiple attempts to email them. That is until the day they arrested me 9 months later. In the days and weeks that followed the events of January 6th, I was disgusted and appalled at the blatant lies that were coming from the media, politicians, and the Department of Justice. In particular, it was FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony on the House floor that made me realize I had to go public with what I knew. I contacted a friend of mine who had a voice in independent media and asked if he would be willing to help me take my story public. Brandon Gray, a true American patriot, was all in. On March 5th, 2021, he conducted a 2-hour interview with me exposing the recording of the JTF's recruitment along with my professional assessment of it. That interview can be seen in its entirety at justanotherchannel.com or on band.video. under a tab by the same name, Green Beret versus FBI. I went public to counter the false government narrative and expose the truth to the American people. I knew I was making myself an FBI target, but I had sworn an oath to the U.S. Constitution, so the choice to speak out was an easy one. That interview was seen by millions of people. In the weeks that followed, I did more than 30 other interviews on the topic. For weeks, Americans trolled the Twitter page of the FBI field office in Tampa, Florida, by posting the interview on their page. After people posted it, the FBI would remove it, and others would repost it. JeremyBrownDefense.com and BrownForFlorida.com. This went on for some time. It became public knowledge that the FBI's failed CI recruit had become an outspoken whistleblower, exposing the agent's actions prior to January 6th. However, as I suspected would happen, the public's interest in the story waned, especially since not one major media outlet covered it. It seemed that the tried and true media tactic of ignoring me into oblivion was going to serve the FBI well once again. But not so fast. In mid-June, a major investigative article was released by Darren Beattie of Revolver.News that provided new evidence and insight exposing the FBI's potential involvement, staging the events of January 6th. The article also uncovered FBI ties to another plot that had been FBI fingerprints all over it. The fake Michigan governor kidnapping plot seemed to be a dress rehearsal for January 6th. It targeted a pro-constitutional group claiming they were crazed far-right militia. Problem was, most of the players turned out to be FBI informants or actual agents. Of the 6 charged in that case, 2 agreed to plead guilty. But despite working with the FBI to testify against the others, a jury found 2 not guilty and failed to return a verdict against the other 2, resulting in a mistrial. Their defense? That the FBI set them up and a jury agreed. Oopsie. The new interest in my story lasted from late June through August, only this time there was fresh perspective and a better understanding of the big picture. Thanks to 7 months of additional investigations, reports, public outcry, and personal videos and accounts. I shared my first-hand account, enhanced by my professional opinion based on 20 years of special operations training and experience, some of which while working with the JTTF and other similar agencies in war zones on foreign soil. These interviews clearly drew the attention of the FBI because almost immediately a few of my friends began getting contacted by the FBI, some of which were questioned and threatened with being charged with crimes if they spoke with me. Was the topic of discussion the events of January 6th? No. They wanted details about Jeremy Brown. I've since had extremely limited access to the FBI's so-called evidence against me. I've noticed the strangest thing. Almost every single report in 302 miraculously started after the Revolver.News article exposing the FBI. Does anyone smell a cover-up? Something else interesting that I've learned from this discovery. The FBI started an assessment of me on January 5th, 2021. Yes, that is a month after they attempted to recruit me. They also had tons of photos and videos of me working at the Capitol, yet the photos of me were never posted as part of the most wanted website of nearly 2,000 other photos. When the other members of my security detail were arrested in March, April, and May of 2021, not one mention of me was part of any of the charging documents. I know because I was looking. It was as if prior to the mid-June exposure of the FBI, they didn't want me to exist. Does this seem odd to you? If that sounds dirty, just wait. There's more. In August, my only sister was personally contacted on a brand new cell phone number by the very agent that was in the recorded recruitment meeting. I found that 302, the infamous FBI contact report form, and it says the FBI used the Bank Secrecy Act to obtain her phone number. But when she asked the agent, "How did you get this number?" he lied and told her a member of my girlfriend's family gave it to him. Only one small problem. That person doesn't know my sister, nor would she have her new cell phone number. Surprise! The FBI can lie to you, but rules for thee, but not for me. The agent didn't call to ask her questions about January 6th. He called to tell her the FBI DHS was concerned that I had been radicalized and may even be suicidal. This was disgusting and tragic since our younger brother had taken his own life in late 2018. 2018. JeremyBrownDefense.com and BrownForFlorida.com. Needless to say, my sister and mother took my brother's suicide extremely hard, and for this agent to use it to manipulate my sister is repulsive. When my sister told me, I attempted to contact the agent via his official government email multiple times in hopes of addressing his concerns, but received no response. In mid-September, my girlfriend of more than 8 years and I were on the verge of selling our home in preparation for our retirement plans to become full-time RVers. Our plan was to hit the open roads with our 2 Australian shepherds, Liberty and Ranger, and we couldn't wait to explore the beauty of America while visiting friends and family along the way. This plan kicked off with the purchase of our first RV in October 2020, well before the FBI entered our lives. The home sale was to be finalized on October 2nd, 2021, but the JTTF had other plans for us. On September 30th, the day before my 47th birthday, and 3 days prior to the close of the sale of our home, I received an early morning phone call from that same FBI agent who tried to unsuccessfully recruit me. With a fake, "Hey, buddy," tone, he left a voicemail stating he had heard we were moving and just wanted to see how I was doing. Of course, I didn't return the call, but I did send the voicemail recording to numerous friends and warned them that they were probably coming to get me soon. Later that afternoon at approximately 4 p.m., they came just before we were leaving to donate clothes and housewares to the Salvation Army. In what my girlfriend estimated to be between 15 to 20 vehicles, a swarm of tactical vest-clad federal agents surrounded our property and arrested me. Without even reading me my rights, they handcuffed me and put me in their unmarked SUV. Along with the misdemeanor arrest warrant, the ATF was there with a search warrant for our property and RV. Evidently, when one is accused of being in a restricted area, nearly 1,000 miles away, 9 months prior, the ATF is necessary to conduct the search. Despite my repeated requests to see the warrant, they refused to produce it, claiming there were just too many pages. After a few minutes, I was whisked away by the very same 2 agents that just 11 months prior had wanted me to work with them. Yes, 11 months prior, when describing how much of a concern I was for them, one of the agents proclaimed on the recording that I was a 0 out of 10. Ultimately, the FBI and ATF spent 5.5 hours searching our property and RV. That's 3 times longer than the 90 minutes the government claims they spent securing and clearing the U.S. Capitol grounds on January 6th. This is after claiming pipe bombs were found nearby. After this exhaustive search of our little property, they only managed to find a single inventory sheet of property that they felt was worthy of seizing, even though only one of the items was listed on the warrant. Part of that list were legal weapons recently purchased by my girlfriend, legal ammo, military gear, special forces manuals that were never even in D.C., and hats. Most disturbing of all, they seized the 5x8 American flag I flew regularly behind our RV. How dare a U.S. Special Forces retiree have an American flag? So what wasn't seized? The clothing, gear, or equipment I actually wore on January 6th. That was apparently overlooked. As I write this updated account on April 19th, 2022, I mark my 200th day of being held in the maximum security section of the Pinellas County Jail as an FBI whistleblower and political prisoner of war. To date, these are the crimes the FBI and Department of Justice are guilty of committing under Title 18 U.S. Code Section 242. Deprivation of rights under color of law. Violations of Article 1 of the Bill of Rights by criminalizing free speech and peaceful assembly for attending a permitted rally on public grounds. They are also violating free speech by attempting to seize JeremyBrownDefense.com and BrownForFlorida.com, as well as money donated for my future legal battles. Money the Supreme Court has ruled is speech. They have abridged our freedom of the press by using the media to push false narratives, lies, and leaking information with the intent of tainting pretrial jurors. When a lying government uses corporate-controlled media like paid propaganda assets, this is a major threat to our republic. Violations of Article 2 of the Bill of Rights by passing and enforcing unconstitutional gun laws that violate the letter and intent of the shall not be infringed clause. Our founders made it crystal clear why the government shall not infringe on this right, because it is necessary to the security of a free state. The government that now tries to restrict what arms we can keep and bear is cut from the same cloth as the government that marched on the arsenals at Lexington and Concord. A tyrannical government. That's why one of my favorite Second Amendment quotes is, "When politicians are trying to take your guns, it's the exact same time you need your guns." Get it? Violations of Article 4 of the Bill of Rights by deceptively obtaining an unreasonable and illegal search warrant, by judge shopping, lying to the issuing judge, and violating laws concerning jurisdiction. When asked by me and my girlfriend to produce the warrant at the time of arrest, they refused. One agent was even recorded stating, "We don't know what we are looking for, yet." What did this illegal search warrant allow the FBI to do? It allowed 2 M67 military fragmentation grenades to be found in our RV. How did they get there? I'll save those tidbits for trial, but I will tell you facts. Those grenades are not mine. Our government has the motive, capability, and a history of planting evidence to set up innocent citizens as patsies. In 20 years serving as a special operations operator, I never employed a single M67 grenade in combat, and rarely used them in training. Because of the close nature of our combat tactics, we used flashbangs and concussion grenades. M67 frags are tools used primarily by infantrymen and Hollywood actors. The FBI ATF claimed to have found these grenades in the bedroom of the RV in a spare tactical chest rig I purchased for airsoft, not in my combat kit sitting next to my bed in the house. Once they found the grenades, the government agents magically lost interest in the search of our RV. I know this because they never found my collection of legally purchased airsoft grenades, other handheld radios, an additional cell phone, and my black roller kit bag, which contained my uniform, helmet, body armor, non-lethal OC spray, radio, and other lawful gear I wore and used on January 6, 2021. All of these items not found during the 5-hour search of our property were located on the RV where you are supposed to believe the FBI ATF found 2 military frag grenades. My kit bag is even pictured clearly in the evidence photos taken by investigators. Seem odd? There's a reason. But they aren't done. As of yesterday, the government, almost 7 months later, just added 4 felony charges claiming they found classified materials. I will reserve comment until I learn more, but I will say this: you should never interrupt your enemy when he is in the process of destroying himself. My prediction is this: the government will add more and more charges because that's the game it plays. But when you know Oz is just a short, old, fat liar hiding behind the curtain, the government loses its most powerful weapon: fear. Don't be surprised if they plant Hunter Biden's photos on my laptop and charge me with his crimes. The government is also violating the Fourth Amendment by attempting to seize charitable donations in an effort to silence my voice and cripple my defense. This money was the property of hundreds of American citizens, meant to help defend me. Also, due to my illegal detention, all my papers, effects, JeremyBrownDefense.com and BrownForFlorida.com, and communications are being read and listened to. If I were free on bond, this would not be possible, and it would be illegal. See how this works? What they should have seized and read is a copy of the United States Constitution. Violations of Article 5 of the Bill of Rights by not reading me my rights prior to arrest and questioning. For 200 days, they have been depriving me of my life, liberty, and property without due process of law. By attempting to seize donated funds to pay for court-appointed counsel that I have already qualified for, based on my low income and lack of assets, the government is taking private property for public use. Violations of Article 6 of the Bill of Rights by making sure nothing is speedy, attempting to not deny me access to any of the evidence against me. By denying my right to a public trial by claiming everything is sensitive or highly sensitive, yet leaking information to media outlets such as the Daily Beast, who had my search warrant before I did. They are denying me the right to face my accusers by citing anonymous tips and numerous unnamed witnesses, many likely to be FBI informants, Because I am locked away in jail, I do not have complete access to witnesses in my favor, and most of my contact with legal counsel are on monitored systems. So far, I have been denied access to my attorney more than 10 times due to COVID and technical issues. On March 24, 2022, I relieved my court-appointed counsel due to lack of results, and I had 3 pro bono attorneys working as a supporting legal team that would allow me to represent myself with the assistance of their competent and professional legal counsel. Yet, the court refused to allow for my representation of choice without providing an explanation. Yes, the very government that appointed an attorney that failed to accomplish anything in 6 months is denying my ability to remove that attorney and replace him with 3 attorneys that have done more in 1 month than was accomplished in 6. Violations of Article 7 of the Bill of Rights by ordering me to pay $12,300 of funds I do not control, without my right to a jury trial on all matters, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20. The judge simply believes he can just order whatever he feels like. Most egregious are the violations of Article 8 of the Bill of Rights by denying me bond and keeping me locked in maximum security. Without any criminal history of violence, or any charges involving violence put forward by the DOJ, the judge has kept me incarcerated for 200 days, and counting, because he claims I'm a threat to law enforcement. The real threat I pose to this corrupt machine is that I will expose the truth, and this judge is just a useful idiot, helping the FBI and DOJ silence my voice and censoring the truth concerning my story. This is cruel and unusual punishment. Sadly, it is just business as usual for the FBI and DOJ. Violations of Article 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights by construing it to deny me my rights and violating Florida trust law when there was no subject matter jurisdiction to seize funds the government has no rights to. Violations of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution by denying me equal protection of the law through selective prosecution of me and other January 6ers, while allowing Black Lives Matter Marxists and Antifa fascists to burn, loot, maim, and kill in hundreds of cities and towns, to include weeks of burning and destroying historic landmarks in Washington, D.C. In fact, a member of Antifa was arrested at one of my support rallies on January 6, 2022. Garrett Smith, who had just legally changed names, was caught and arrested by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office at the very jail I am being held. He had makeshift explosives as confirmed by a bomb squad and the FBI. Despite tons of evidence of his intent and affiliations with Antifa, Smith was released and all but misdemeanor charges were dropped. To this day, each time I see my personal JTTF agents in court, I ask if they've found Garrett Smith yet. Their response? Silence. Here's the bottom line. The FBI's JTTF attempted to recruit me to spy on Americans and set them up as patsies. I refused, but recorded this attempt. They tried to ignore me as I warned the American people for 7 months after their lies started to be sold via the corrupt and compromised media and foreign-owned Congress. They attempted to erase me from the January 6th case completely until it became obvious I was not going away nor shutting up. So they are now in the process of framing me for crimes I did not commit. All these illegal acts by the FBI and DOJ are meant to silence me and keep me from exposing their lies and corruption. Their fake charges and overzealous arrest were meant to intimidate not only me, but also the American people. They think that this illegal imprisonment will break my will and allow them to coerce me into pleading to crimes I did not commit, or that will bolster their false narratives of January 6th. When all their tactics fail, and they will, then what? I know. Do you? Ask those who have seen what's next, those that suffered through it and survived. Read our human history. Before attempting to get me to sell out America, the FBI should have read the history of the Green Beret. But how did we get here? As a nation, we have taken our eyes off the prize of liberty and lost our way. Our families, our neighborhoods, our churches, our schools, and our nation have fallen into the evil trap of ignorance and complacency. We have trusted someone else to solve every issue. We can deny it or even blame our neighbors, but each of us is guilty. If we hope to restore our liberty, our families, and our republic, we are going to need God's help. There's nothing new under the sun. We must look back on history for answers to the question, where does this lead? Or how does this end? What are the outcomes of unchecked, unrestrained tyranny? The poet Martin Niemöller speaks of the horror of Nazi Germany. Alexander Solzhenitsyn recounts the terror of Soviet Russia. Whether it's Mao's China or the tribal slaughters that plague the African continent, evil always finds a way to creep into power, then subject humans to bondage and death. How? Because the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke. But that same history reveals to us the solutions to this human cycle of liberty and bondage. How far will tyranny push? As far as you let it, so said Thomas Jefferson. You may be asking, how do we push back? Mr. Jefferson had an answer for that as well. It does not take a majority, but an irate and tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of liberty in the souls of men. As I sit here in my jail cell, being denied justice and my constitutionally protected God-given rights, I wonder, is anyone irate or tireless enough to save our republic? Will our children and our children's children wonder what it was like to live free? How long will we read the words of our Constitution, yet allow judges and politicians to tell us the words don't mean what we know them to mean? If you're hearing this, are you irate enough yet? Are you tireless enough to stop this destruction of America? Like our founding fathers, are you willing to pledge your lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to set brush fires of liberty in the souls of men? Are you willing to risk anything? Or will we just wait for some other good men to come along and do that something? The time to look in the mirror and answer that question is now. Trust me, the time to fight is not after the tyrant locks you in a jail cell. JeremyBrownDefense.com and BrownForFlorida.com. Here's the good news. God promises us He will give us victory over evil whenever and wherever it raises its ugly head. But only if we stand up, face it head on, and rebuke it with faith and action. Look at the example of young David when evil Goliath stood daily on the battle line, threatening, taunting, and mocking King Saul's people. They all stood by in fear and did nothing, asking themselves, how can we defeat this warrior? He's bigger, stronger, and more powerful than us. Who can challenge him? It was young David, a boy who believed in God's promise of protection. A young boy that stepped forward to face the giant warrior. David wasn't even big enough to wear the king's armor, but he had courage and faith in what was right. When will we find our courage to face these giants? When will we speak up and take action to stand against this tyranny? We can no longer stand idly by, like cowards asking, who will stand and fight this giant? Or who will save us? We must be Americans who say, here I am, send me. The longer we wait, the harder and longer the fight will be. You are not alone. We might realize the truth if we just put down our phones and turn off the distractions that evil has put in our way. We are not alone. At worst, there are 74 million of us. If you believe the lying media, I believe when liberty is properly explained to people, closer to hundreds of millions will be on our side. Trust me, most of my inmate friends would not likely share my views on the size or role of government or the economy, but almost all agree with my views on liberty and freedom. They are simply being destroyed from lack of knowledge. My name is Jeremy Brown, and I am a January 6th political prisoner of war, being held in the very country I spent my entire adult life defending at the highest level I could achieve, as a Green Beret. I am specially selected and well-trained, and I'm prepared for this battle. As an American, I was born for this. Liberty is under assault, and I will fight until my dying breath before I surrender one letter of my liberty to this evil. I am only one man, but if I'm the only man, so be it. But I know there are millions just like me, So I'm sounding the alarm as loud as I can from my American gulag cell that now is the time for patriots, not politicians. Warriors, not wimps. Leaders, not leeches. Champions, not cowards. Now is the time for winter soldiers to take action for freedom, not sunshine patriots speaking hollow words for profit. I ask you, are you ready to light brush fires of liberty in the souls of men? Then don't do nothing. Dio presso liber, liberty of death.
Well, I'll tell you that he's something else, isn't he, Ken? I'll tell you.
That's, when we look back to our forefathers and we look at some of the military and some of the other men that obviously were of the early American that we know, Jeremy reminds me of one of those. He really does.
Right. And folks, I know that was kind of long to listen to, but I think it's important for you to understand about Jeremy and what he's fighting. He's in a jail cell in Citrus County, Florida, and sentenced to 7 years. So been down in that jail cell for, I guess, about 30 months now, 34 months, something like that. And he's been interviewed and appeared on a number of different outlets. So we were very, very fortunate, I think, to get him to appear with us. And so what you're going to hear now is you're going to hear part one of a phone interview that I did with Jeremy. And the questions that I posed to Jeremy, and I'll explain this. I think I go into this in the recording, but we start off with a set of personal questions for him, how he's doing personally, and then we get into some more general questions. And I think the general questions will come more on part two that we'll be bringing to you on August 5th. But for this evening, here is part one of my phone interview with Jeremy Brown from Citrus County, Florida prison. So here we go. Everyone, Dale Parrish, COS Indiana Live. So pleased to bring to you a special interview today. And it's going to be with a J6 prisoner, Jeremy Brown. Now, I'm going to be showing a couple pictures of him as we go through the interview here. So, and I'll be in the background, so you won't see me while we're talking with Jeremy. But I got a few things, just a couple things I just want to make sure that you're aware of as a viewer. It's very, very important that you have listened to the narrative that we just presented prior to this interview, prior to this recorded interview. My co-host, Ken Kashuba, our state communications coordinator, as well as my co-host, put together a narrative, and he did an excellent job, a narrative of a document that Jeremy had prepared called Don't Do Nothing. And this gives a very, very full background on Jeremy. And I wanted Ken to read that to you so that we wouldn't have to spend the time to go through all the details here on the interview. So it's very, very important that you hear that prior to listening to this interview, if at all possible. All right. So that's the first thing that I wanted to mention. Second thing is Jeremy is housed in prison in Citrus County, Florida. So as with prison communication systems, the connection may not be good at some time. So we're doing our best here. As a matter of fact, we're doing a three-way call here, and I've got Jeremy on my speakerphone right now. So we'll be bringing him on very, very soon. I want to make one thing clear to you as the viewer. Jeremy is only allowed, this is prison regulation, Jeremy is only allowed 15-minute segments and phone calls. So, so when his 15 minutes are up, about 1 minute prior to that 15-minute mark, a recording will come on saying there's 1 minute left. Now, the call will end, but Jeremy will then call me back and we'll get another 15 minutes. So, like I said, most of this we will edit out, but we probably won't be able to edit out some of the recorded messages that the prison system will give us. So, having said that, and so just so you know that we're going to be running into some of these obstacles as we go through. So let's get started. Jeremy, are you there?
I am here, Bill.
All right, Jeremy, thank you so much for this, your time this evening in this interview. We're very, very pleased to have you on.
Well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and your organization and all the American people out there, because it's an important aspect of the January 6th story that has been intentionally hidden. And the only way to shed light on the matter is to do just that, to get the word out and let people decide for themselves.
All good. That's what we want to do. And Jeremy, I got a couple pictures of you here, and I've got one of them on the screen right now. You obviously you can't see this, but we'll be showing a couple pictures of you as we talk here. But our questions, I've collected some questions from other Convention of States supporters and leaders, and they generally fall into two categories. We've got questions that are more of a personal nature, and then we have some more general questions. So I want to deal first with the personal questions. And so let's get started with the personal questions. Now, of course, you have filed an appeal, right, for your case. And if I'm right, that appeal was filed back in October of 2023. Am I right on that?
Yes, that's correct. In the federal criminal system, you must wait until your actual sentencing for you to file a notice of appeal, which we did immediately following my sentencing in April of 2023.
Okay.
And then that appeal brief was prepared over the next few months and was actually submitted in October of 2023. And actually, effective this past Tuesday, there's many different briefs that go along. So our initial brief, which basically explains our full ground, then the government has a couple of months to respond with their response brief, and then we have a few months to respond to their response. So now that all of those briefs are complete, and they will all be packaged together and sent to the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. And so over the next 3 months, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals will determine whether or not they are going to grant oral arguments, which is the opportunity for my appeals attorney to go before them in a full panel in Atlanta, Georgia, and actually make the argument. Once that is done, then there's going to be another couple of months for them to rule on the case. And so we're looking at probably not having resolution in the appeal until January to March time frame. So it really all depends on how the granting of certain dates and arguments and everything line up. But that appeal is fully submitted, and now it's just a waiting game. And if your listeners want to read that original appeals brief, it can be found on our website at jeremybrown.defense.com, where you can read the grounds of which we have some very substantial constitutionally based arguments for the Fourth Amendment, the Second Amendment, and then of course the Fifth Amendment. So I definitely encourage all your listeners, if you want to actually see how the fight against the government and their violations of the Constitution takes place, read that appeals brief. It's very excellently written by Attorney Michael Upperman. And yes, that's where we are. It's the big waiting game.
It certainly is. So this could go on for many more months then, right? And
absolutely. In fact, by the time, and we are very, very confident, and so will you. If you read the appeals brief, you will see that the government has no case, right? I mean, and this ties into the whole fraudulent nature of their conviction to begin with. But by the time the 11th U.S. Circuit Court rules, I will very likely have served 40 months in jail on an 87-month sentence. So it will be over half of my sentence because in the federal system, you automatically only serve 85% of your sentence time. And by the time they actually get to the, we're sorry, we made a mistake and violated your rights, I will have already served half of my sentence. And that is why the process is the punishment.
yeah, I can certainly see that. Well, okay, Jeremy, thanks for the update on your appeal then. Tell us, now some of these questions are pretty basic questions, but are you incarcerated with or in communication with any other J6ers that are in the same situation as you? Are you with any of those individuals?
I am not, Dale. First of all, I've been in jail now for 34 months total since my arrest in September of 2021. And throughout that time, I've been in 2 different facilities, and only one time have I actually physically come across another J6er, and that was when I was at Pinellas County Jail. There was one elderly man who had been sentenced to 7 days in county jail because him and his wife were invited in by law enforcement into the Capitol. They walked around for a few minutes, and then they asked the officer how do they get out of there, and he directed them out of the building. Now, she was actually sentenced to 30 days because she actually lit a cigarette inside the Capitol. So clearly a hardened criminal, and therefore she got the punishment that she deserved as a domestic terrorist, right, for lighting that cigarette. But no, I say that tongue in cheek because the story of their process alone was horrific. But that is the only J6er that I've come across because the government's standard operating procedure in J6 cases is to illegally arrest you in the state where you live, very likely without the appropriate extradition order, and then whisk you away to the D.C. jail in Washington, D.C. We were able to prevent that from happening in my case because they made the mistake of filing additional charges in the Middle District of Florida, which then gave us the ability to file a motion keeping me in Florida. And that little oversight in their grand master plan is what prevented them from illegally extraditing me to D.C. Because we have since checked with the state of Florida and the governor's office of Ron DeSantis, and the federal government violated Florida law by never filing for extradition warrant prior to my arrest. So if they would have, technically they have kidnapped me, but if they would have been extradited me to D.C. without that extradition order, they would have been in violation, additional violation of Florida state law. But of course, trying to get a court system to actually follow up on that is nearly impossible.
Okay. All right. Well, how's your treatment been in prison, Jeremy? How have they treated you so far?
For the most part, the treatment has been fine, right? I mean, you're in jail, so you're going to be treated like an inmate, even though you know that you're not. But for the most part, many of the officers know my story, definitely now, because we're 34 months into my incarceration. And then the inmates actually, I was just telling Jim the other day that, I actually get more respect from the inmates sometimes I feel like than I did as, a regular citizen, because they all know about my case. They all have their own struggles. They have their own struggles with this corrupted judicial system. Regardless of whether or not they broke the law, they still have rights, and those rights should be adhered to by the government. And so they respect the battle that I'm waging against the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. And so my treatment has been relatively well.
Okay.
I know that the treatment of others has not been that great, and I definitely don't want to deny or lessen that. But for the most part, here being held in Florida during this time has definitely been a benefit as far as the treatment goes.
Jeremy, the next question that I had was about your legal expenses. How have you? I know that it's expensive going through all these legal hurdles and so forth. How have you been able to afford your legal expenses?
Bill, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is expensive. Again, like I always say, the process is the punishment. We are approaching about $500,000 in legal expenses.
Wow.
And
wow.
because of the nature of my situation, I knew that when I went public against the FBI that they would target me. So I took measures to ensure that as soon as I was arrested, that we would immediately be able to get up and running a fundraising mechanism in order to offset some of our legal costs. And so what we've done is we've utilized the crowdfunding platform Give, Send, Go, which is a Christian-based crowdfunding source, very similar to GoFundMe. But if you know anything about GoFundMe, they tend to censor and take down and seize the assets of those that they don't agree with. And so Give, Send, Go is really kind of the politically conservative answer to GoFundMe. So we've had a Give, Send, Go campaign since the day that I was arrested, and you can find that ability to donate and help contribute to the site at JeremyBrownDefense.com. We've basically reached out as we tell my story and also explain that, look, this is an expensive and long battle, and through donations is how we're all able to offset these legal expenses. So generous donations from supporters, as well as just trying to be a good financial steward of what we have been given, is how we've been able to really keep ahead and on top of our legal expenses. But we still have a long way to go. I mean, just the appeal alone is $80,000 that we've spent just on the appeal alone. Now, if that appeal gets denied at the 11th Circuit, well, then that means there will be additional fees. There will be additional appeals need to be filed. I have also the separate criminal case for the 2 misdemeanor trespassing counts in Washington, D.C. that we're fighting, and there will be appeals associated with that case as well. So it's not like, hey, you've raised this much money up to this point and you're good to go. No, we have a lot of legal work still ahead, because my goal is not simply to make this all go away and end. My goal is to get the government on the record to fight these violations in the appeals court, and then hopefully after we're proving correct by having these appeals granted, showing that the government did violate my rights, then commencing a campaign of civil suits against the government and these agencies, as well as seeking criminal charges. Because the Title 18, Section 242 clearly states that it is a violation of federal law for any member of the government in any capacity to utilize their official position under the color of law, meaning the false pretense that they have authority derived from law to violate your rights. Okay? And so the problem is that Congress has passed a statutory law, but they've really provided no real mechanism to come against those that violate your rights. So that will be part of this process. If there is a law, there must be an enforcement mechanism, and we intend to find it.
Yes, this is Jeremy. I want to thank you for that segment, and we will certainly be back with you again. So look forward to talking to you again. Well, there's part one. Uh,
A great interview, and some very good information from Jeremy. And obviously, your heart goes out to him and the other J6ers that are imprisoned right now, because you can just see that's just not it's un-American. It really it's just un-American.
Wendy's going to be bringing us many more stories, and I'm telling you, some of the stories, some of the things that I'm hearing about. You're right. It's just heartbreaking. I mean, elderly people being imprisoned, albeit short times, but I mean, the stories go on and on. So there's what I'm learning a great deal here, Ken. Believe me, there is a large network of J6 support people out there, and people that have that were involved, that were sentenced, that were affected by it, and have set up other systems and sites and so forth to help others that have been involved in this. As a matter of fact, I think our next J6 guest, I think, is going to be a married couple, husband and wife, that were involved in January 6th, and subsequent to their sentences, have set up a website to help out families and so forth. There's families involved here too. I mean, it's well, I mean, there've been over like 1,500, something like 1,500 arrests involved in this whole thing. So that's affected a lot of people.
We did have a question from a viewer wanting to know if there was a way that a card of encouragement or that could be sent to Jeremy, and I'm sure that we can check with Wendy on that. Maybe we can supply that in the next interview as to how people can send a card, just a note of cheer or something to kind of keep his spirits up.
Yes, we'll certainly ask that question. I'm sure there's a way of doing that, although once again, the prison system, they've got certain regulations. I can't email him, and the phone call, like I said, we had to go through a third party that's located in Nebraska, and she set up the three-way call. So it was a bit cumbersome. So I hope everybody enjoyed that part one, and just to remind everyone, now coming up on August 5th, our next broadcast, we're going to have part two of the Jeremy Brown interview, but we're also going to bring on Esther Cook, who is in charge of the COS intern program, and she's going to be talking to us about the program coming up for 2025. As you know, we had a couple interns here in Indiana in 2024, so I'm sure we're going to be part of this program going into 2025 also. But as I said, we will also have part two of the Jeremy Brown interview. Might also mention that coming up on August 26th was our next roundtable, and the topic for that roundtable is going to be the enumerated powers of the federal government. That's always a good topic and everyone should understand just what the Constitution, what powers the Constitution lays out for the federal government and what is not part of the Constitution. So enumerated powers of the federal government. So that'll be coming up on the roundtable in August. And Ken, I think episode number 15 of our podcast, COS Indiana Live Voices, where we interviewed Tim Heidenreich. Is that on Spotify.com? Have we got that published yet?
That one is published, I believe. Yes.
It is? Okay.
Be sure of that, but yeah, I believe Tim's podcast was published.
Okay. Very interesting story with Tim Heidenreich. I'm sure everyone will enjoy that. And now we got to get busy and find another candidate to interview for episode number 16. Again, we're trying with our podcast here. We're trying to focus on outstanding Indiana volunteers for convention and state. So we're trying to limit ourselves to Indiana people for this. So Ken, I think we'll end it up with our email address. If anyone has any comments or questions, please feel free to send us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. So unfortunately, due to time considerations tonight, we are going to have to postpone another COS Basics with John Arkerman. So that will resume on our next broadcast on August 5th. John is really getting into this. He's Ken, I know he's I can't remember which one was the last one we did. Was it number 10, episode number 10?
I think that's the last one we did, but I think he's up as far as 15, I think.
Yeah, he's got another 5 or so already in the bank. So he's going to town on this. So that'll be on August 5th, our next broadcast. So, well, that'll be a wrap for us tonight, Ken. Actually, I thought we were going to go a little farther, a little longer than actually, but looks like we're pretty much on time. So, everyone, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. We want to try and do more of this type of program, and I'm hoping that you're going to enjoy it. I will say this: we're certainly getting an outstanding amount of views on the shorts that are being created for them. We may have another record month for July. I don't want to say, as soon as I say that, we'll fall short of it, but
Yep. We'll let the next couple of days go by, Dale, and then we can celebrate once again.
Then we can, you'll have to make another thank you video for everyone. Okay. All right. Okay, folks. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and everyone, have a good night. Thank you very much.